Hi Kules, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video where we will be discussing Barcelona's new tactics and preseason tactics as a whole in the preseason, right? So this will be probably a longer video as we dive deep into everything that we have seen so far over the 3 games that we've played in the United States. And as always, do subscribe to the channel. It's going to help us a lot to get this family to grow. We upload weekly Barcelona content only. So if that's you and you want to subscribe, join the family. Let's get right into the video. In the build-up phase, if Barcelona's centre-backs are pressed, they are really encouraged to be a little bit more adventurous and still look to hold on to the ball even though they are pressed man-to-man. If the press do get a little much for Barcelona centre-backs, you see them splitting on either side of the centre-back to create this numerical advantage. And you see that the fullbacks will stay relatively wide, and if need be, you will see one of those defensive midfielders come into this position, which allow the fullbacks to go up a little bit higher on the pitch. It seems like it's highly unlikely that we'll ever see a back three consisting of 3 centre-backs under Hansi Flick. It's either going to be Ter Stegen joining the centre-backs or one of the DMs dropping in between them. It's also really refreshing to see that the centre-backs have a lot more fluidity and freedom. And the fullbacks being deep means that they're an easy outlet rather than them being high up the pitch and hard to find. So we're building up as a team, and the DMs is really refreshing to see them drop in between, meaning we're only going to have a back three when we need it. So that cancels out the staticness as well. In the situation where Barcelona gets relatively pressed a little bit higher in this instance, we do see that Hansi Flick do encourage his centre-backs or his goalkeeper to go long straight into the fullback even though they can be pressed there man-to-man. But another way to get around this is also to play around the pressure, and then if the guys do join it up here, you can see that Barcelona looks to find the player that's free in the midfield where they can look to drive up the pitch and then counter-attack as well. Something I want to point out here is that Barcelona wasn't necessarily forced to go long. The keeper purposely kept the ball for that long to bait them into a press, and then he would release it. Because if you look at the scenario here, now the fullback is, okay, he's pressed, right? But what if he goes around this player and then actually goes up the pitch? Then Barcelona would instantly be in on goal. And I think this is actually the same logic behind the fullbacks being so deep. Because look, now you see Manchester City is committing 2 players to the same fullback in order to press him higher up the pitch, right? But this, now you can see the instance, he can actually go back to the centre back, but now it's actually aiming for the player that's free in midfield. And this is how you are vertical. The fullback staying high is very vertical from Barcelona. You can see Pablo Torre is now ultimately being found in that space, and now Barcelona could instantly drive up the pitch. So it's going to be a problem to press Barcelona. Another way Barcelona used to get through the high pressure, especially the instances where the fullbacks was covered, you saw that one of the defensive midfielders actually went over into the half space in order to receive the ball right over there. But in the situations where one of the defenders would actually follow the defensive midfielder, you would see that opens up the pathway to Robert Lewandowski. So now Robert Lewandowski can actually partner up with Pablo Torre. But in the instance, if he would stay closer, you would see the defensive midfielder would immediately find somebody like Pablo Torre in between the lines. So this is great tactics. If you cover the flanks, then you leave up the middle. If you cover the middle, you leave up the flank. So it's going to really be hard to stop Barcelona if we can connect all of these passes and get everything right. In this frame, we really see that Marc-Andre Ter Stegen is baiting them into a press where you also see that Christensen is the single pivot, right? Even though there's 2 players around him, he's a single pivot. And now you see him finding Casado in the half space, which is great tactics from Hansi Flick. And now Christensen can actually make a run forward and receive the ball yet again, right, for verticality. And here you see Christensen again as a single pivot. But now Milan realized that they cannot really press us that high because they're just going to leave space higher up the pitch. But we were still able to do that with Casado being in the half space. He's actually drawing the midfielder away from the center, which is allowing Marc-Andre Ter Stegen to actually find Robert Lewandowski in that half space. But I prefer this to be Ferran Torres because I don't think Robert Lewandowski's back-to-goal play is that good in my opinion. But before we continue, guys, just hold up. If you're a Barcelona fan and you're a diehard Barcelona fan, you'll love this channel. I know it. We get thousands of views, but you guys are not subscribed. So please do subscribe to the channel, guys. But as the team move up the pitch, you see Barcelona remaining in their 4-2-3-1 shape with their double pivot intact. But by no means are they just going to stay there and be blocked. you do see the move into the half space where you have somebody sitting on the single pivot role with the other one operating in the half space, and you see this happening towards the other side as well, so they can still get those passing options right over there. But if the opposition do press Barcelona a little bit too high, one of the variations in a back three that they use is one of the fullbacks will take up that space while the other one will go forward, while one of the pivots will take up the deeper role here in the left back space. So this is really good from Barcelona. A lot of tactical variations that we are seeing. And it's refreshing to see the movement and the fact that we are not really that static. We have been so accustomed to a static double pivot. You guys know how I feel about the double pivot actually. But you can see also they are never in line really with each other. The one always seems to be higher than the other. So the opposition doesn't know who to mark because they are never really in line and static with each other, right? You can see here that Balde forms a back three and then Casado goes out and over to take his position. So again, movement taking place for Barcelona right here. And Casado goes over to the half space to be an option, right? So the opposition cannot press with a front two then, so now they have to give a front three, which means they will leave space higher up the pitch. But something else I want to make mention of, when Bernal and Casado is dropping into the half space like that and the opposition really has them well covered, you do see that Ter Stegen is encouraged to come out a little bit higher in a very daring and risky manner in order for him to draw these players out of possession and actually get the players out further, in the space. But also you can see that if the players are covered, the number 10 can even come as deep as defensive midfielder in order to also get on the ball and to create an extra option, right? And even Rafinha went into the left back space in order to drive the play up the pitch. So there's really a lot of variations that we are going to see from Hansi Flick and Barcelona in this upcoming season, right? In this frame right here, you can really see how high past his box Ter Stegen is, and if AC Milan had a coordinated attack right here, Barcelona would have been in some serious danger. But we clearly see here Gundogan coming deep, and this is actually really refreshing. Everybody's dropping deep, right? This is almost like a false nine. Midfielder coming from his position, the number 10, to get on the ball since the other options are marked. You even saw that from Robert Lewandowski. So if this is going to be a common theme, this is going to be really hard to stop Barcelona. But the question is, can we then find these guys higher up the pitch, right? And can they return? And look at Rafinha, also a little bit deeper. I don't know exactly why Rafinha was doing this against AC Milan, but maybe it's because of his quality on his left foot as well. Throughout Xavi's tenure as Barcelona coach, we've really seen him using a dedicated back three, right? Which kind of made us static, and you know how I felt about this. But Hansi Flick does the exact same thing using a back three, but only when it's needed, when you have one of the defensive midfielders dropping in between the center backs. And this is also how you can kind of like say, this is the tiki-taka way, because the moment one of the defensive midfielders drop, the number 10 will come deep, right? And now you see all of this space right here is filled up by the winger inverting and therefore the fullback going forward. But this is all happening simultaneously. Victor coming in here and then you see Kunde go up the pitch, right? So now you can kind of see the 3-4 box midfield with the two wingers, which is now the fullbacks and of course the number 9. So also you can see that sometimes you see the likes of Bernal or Casado would drop into the space right here in order to create this back three, this lopsided back three. Sometimes Casado even go as deep as being in a center back position himself, and the same thing would happen all over again. Torre coming to help, the two wingers inverting. So a lot of differences, but it's the same concept if in a general spectrum. The only real problem I have with this tactic is, what if Bernal and Casado is actually in midfield and we are being counter-attacked, right? Then we don't have 3 players back, because these guys will only be dropped in between the center backs in an organized manner when the opposition is not really pressing us that high, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how Hansi Flick is going to fight this, because we'll concede a lot of goals this way. But I do think that Casado dropping between center back and fullback is a much better option for us, right? Because he can receive the ball there when the passing is circulating, right? In the final third, most of the tactics in the build-up phase and the mid phase will also be valid over here, right? But one thing we do know is that Hansi Flick at all times do want the half spaces to be covered, whether that is a defensive midfielder going up, or like we already established, when the defensive midfielder drop here, then the winger will be inverting while the fullback will go forward. And this obviously will have this guy going over here, and then Bernal, you will have the central progression going on here, right? And Casado obviously joining the midfield late on, because there's a lot of emphasis on this intricate plays in between the lines, playing the ball and getting in behind the defense, right? So these half spaces will always be covered. And one thing that really struck me was how that if the other winger would invert, right? So Kunde would be back, then you would see Victor over there, Casado would obviously be here up higher. Is that when the ball is on one side, right, when the opposition is being dragged all over to one side, you would see Rafinha going into these spaces, and as soon as the switch would happen, he would actually make this run through here. And if the ball does get here and the center back maybe has the ball, then you would see these runs from the fullbacks going on, right? And these many players being so central also give us a chance to do some gegenpressing, right? So really good tactics high up the pitch from Barcelona. We just need the correct execution from our players. That's all. You can see in this instance right here, Casado and Bernal actually very deep, drawing players out in the press, right? And you can now see that Pau Victor is taking that half space, therefore the fullback goes forward. And you can see here Casado being in a half space with Gundogan dropping, but you still see the half space being covered by Pau Victor actually, with the fullback overlapping and really being in space there. So yeah, intricate passing is really being encouraged by Barcelona. You can see here Gundogan receiving the ball, turning straight away and giving the ball. I think that's Robert Lewandowski. And he's giving the ball to Rafinha, who's in the half space, right, making great runs because AC Milan was drawn over to that right hand side, right? So he's inverting then. And then also you can see Casado, one of the defensive midfielders, being in the half space. So this is really great tactics for me, right? Covering all the spaces, but you don't have consistent players being in the consistent positions, right? Look at Rafinha yet again. He's inverting because the ball is over on that one side. And you actually will see these late runs being made by Barcelona's fullbacks as the ball go. Look at how late the fullback is, but at the same time, Rafinha is in the half space, right? So really exciting things. We just need to execute. Remember how I said that when the ball is on the other side, the winger on that side will actually come into the half space and then the fullback will go forward. Well, what happens on the side where the ball is at the moment, right? You will see that the fullback will not go forward because the number 10 would be right over there, right? This fullback stays right here in order to draw these players out of position, and then now you have a one-on-one. So if the ball do circulate, then this player run in here. He will either be followed by the defender or the midfielder has to follow him, which creates the space right over here. Like in this frame, if you look closely here, you'll see while the ball is on the left wing being circulated, you see that Pau Victor is coming into the half space from that side. Now, as the ball would get circulated, he stays in the half space and therefore he would make a run through the half space, ultimately keeping that fullback narrow, and therefore the ball could easily go over to the side, which is brilliant tactics. And look how Pablo Torre is doing that, right? He's running through that half space, but this is at the side where the ball is. To make it clear, let's look at this. You can now see that Balde and the wingers really having two players, and now Pablo Torre is making that run and he's drawing that player actually with him. So great tactics from Flick. I also think one of the keys for Flick with the movement that you see, especially from the defensive midfielders, Casado, is to draw these players out of position, and then Barcelona wants to hit those vertical passes in between the lines, right? And then you get the likes of the other ones who's playing off of those players who can receive and also get the third man runs. For an example, if Casado is dropping, right, and Pablo and Victor gets the ball, he will then lay it off to Pablo Torre while Casado is making the third man run, right? The same here with Bernal. If Bernal drops here, he's drawing players into position, or out of position rather, and then Barcelona would look to hit these passes in between the lines. So Hansi Flick certainly wants to open up the opposition through the center, because then Barcelona is closer to goal, where we could hit Robert Lewandowski and all the required players in the right positions to take on the goalie. In this frame right here, we see that Dominguez is actually drawing a player out of position, and therefore Casado can now receive the ball in between the lines. So that is why the people are dropping so much between the centre back and full back, and also between the centre backs. And verticality starts Barcelona's attack way deeper than we actually think. Like Bernal here is actually receiving the ball in a lot of space, but without keeping the ball or circulating, he actually plays a direct pass, trying to catch Man City's high line and actually play in behind them. So verticality is going to be key here for Barcelona in exploiting the opposition. You see players being drawn out of position by the double pivot, and now Pablo Torre is free to receive the ball totally free in between the lines. So people is going to be dragged all over the place. And you can see here the third man run with Casado passing the ball to the first receiver. And then you see the third man run. You will see in a second that that player is actually receiving the ball in between the lines in space. So intricate passing and moving in between the lines in verticality is going to be a huge part of Barcelona's play, guaranteed, right? It's very risky to play this way because you're going to give away a lot of balls. If you watch the game against Monaco last night, you will realize this, right? But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing everything. If you have watched up until this point, I want you to comment down below, sell their statue. I mean, last night was just horrific from this dude and we need to sell him. As always, guys, please do subscribe to the channel. It's going to help us a lot. I'm going to do another video focusing only on the defending tactics. And it's also going to be a longer video like you're seeing right now. Like I said, do subscribe. We upload weekly Barcelona content only where we focus on the tactics side. No news, no nothing, only the tactics. Thank you very much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one.